We all have a sensible side. A side that's punctual, a side that's polite, and a side that follows the rules. What are you doing?
This is a bit.
What do you mean it's a bit?
This is the Vicky Butler Henderson bit.
Vicky Butler Henderson did a bit on this?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, here's a review of the Volkswagen Polo. If you would like me to review your car, my email address is carsplusclassics1@gmail.com. Anyway, back to the review. So, viewers, I'm going to let you into a little secret. When I was actually trawling YouTube to find a car review of this generation of 6N Volkswagen Polo, there was almost nothing. There was a lot of videos where they've been modified, and there was videos of 0 to 60s, for example, but there wasn't actually any single reviews. And in fact, the Vicky Butler Henderson reference we did there was actually of the 6N too. It wasn't even of this generation 6N. How can a car this popular and this successful, especially in the UK, have almost no reviews, especially from its day when it was at its peak? I'm astonished. These cars were everywhere. And to be honest, a fair amount has actually survived. These are fantastic cars and they're extremely reliable. And this is a really good testament to German solidity. It really is. This particular model was produced between 1994 up until 1999, and obviously it was replaced with the 6N2, which went up until about 2001, 2002. And then you had the 9Ns after that. With the generation of Polo, it had this reputation of being a bit solid and sensible, but bland. If anything, this is kind of like a small German equivalent of a Toyota Carina E in that sense. You know, it's got a boring image to some ways, but it's also very, very solid and sensible. And that's why I did the reference to Vicky Butler Henderson. There's only 2 other references to this in Top Gear from the 1990s. There's Jeremy Clarkson reviewing the 16-valve version of this for about a minute, where he's slating it throughout the minute.
It's a lot better than this. I was expecting a lot from the 16-valve Polo.
Come on, car. Come on. Let's have 60. You don't use a stopwatch to measure this car's acceleration. You use a calendar.
And then you've got James May doing a comparison test where he compares the weakest engine one, the 50 brake horsepower 1 litre one, and again, that's about a minute.
Right, let's be sensible. This is the 1 litre L and it has 50 brake horsepower, which makes it rather slow. And you have to remember that in this car, do remember to leave plenty of time for your journey.
Well, I must admit, James May's one did have a really interesting set of indicators that were green. But anyway, this car has not been covered. And like I said, nowadays they're really popular with modifiers and the people that want to upgrade the looks and the power. And it's fine, it's got the all kind of platform for that. But what about the standard one? What about the cooking one? What about the one we took for granted? What about the one that was ferrying young families and people to and from work and day-to-day activities every single day? What happened to those ones? Why isn't there a review? So today's review, I really want to cover this and go into a full-length review of this car. Now, the range of engines on offer with this car, they varied over time, but you had a 1 litre with 8 valves, a 1.4 with 8 valves, and this 1.6 with 8 valves. Now, you find the automatics were mostly paired to 1.6s, and in fact, a lot of 1.6s were automatics in the UK, but the 1.4s also had an automatic as well. I find with the 1 litres, actually, they are very slow, but they do have torque. In fact, all these units are fairly torquey, but this 1.6 is a different kettle of fish entirely, and I'll come to that a bit later, viewers. But this was actually a bit of a revelation for Volkswagen, and then something else I'd like to say, and again, this is a controversial opinion, but everyone goes on about the Volkswagen Golf, the Mark IV generation, being the one that really turned everything around for Volkswagen. It was the future of Volkswagen. And same with the Volkswagen Passat of, say, 1997. Those 2 cars really did change the game for Volkswagen. But that's not where it started. And in fact, you find that Volkswagen and Audi, they share similar design traits. In my opinion, they've got kind of a Bauhaus design to their design, especially from that era. I think a lot of it started from this car, believe it or not. Now, I'm not saying that it all stemmed from this one, but I am saying this was the first Volkswagen of its time to feel really modern. Bear in mind, at the time, the Passat was just an old-feeling car, and the Golf was the Mark III. The Golf just didn't feel as modern as the Polo did. The Golf still was very, very square, and it wasn't until the Mark IV came along that really changed things around. But before the Mark IV Golf, we had this Polo, and this Polo was very futuristic, in my personal opinion, for 1994. And bear in mind, this car was meant to come out in 1990, so it would have been well ahead of its time back then. I'm very proud of this car for being so far ahead of its time. I mean, at the time, it would have been rivaling against the Mark IV Fiestas and the K11 Nissan Micros, as well as obviously the Mark I Fiat Punto and the Citroen AX, which then obviously became the Citroen Saxo, and that kind of class of car. And yes, they were quite a competitive field, but this one really stood the test of time in terms of not just solidity, but its design. Its design is fantastic. Now, this brings me nicely onto the styling of this car, viewers. I do think the styling of this car is absolutely fantastic. And I'll be completely honest with you, viewers, this is probably my second favourite design hatchback of the 1990s. It really is. I think my favourite is probably the 1992 to 1995 Honda Civic. The Honda Civic hatchback, the 3-door, was the best one out of them all for me in the 1990s. But this is the second best. I absolutely love the styling. In my opinion, when it was released in 1994, this was far superior styling-wise than the Mark III Golf. And it's a lot better than pretty much every other car in its class. So, where do I start? It's got a very simple face, yes, but bear in mind this is 1994 and Volkswagen was still very, very square. So to come to a much more rounded design, a much more, well, Bauhaus kind of European, not early 90s design, it really pays off on this car. Now, I know that this car shared a lot of styling cues from the related Seat Ibiza. However, it's a bit disproportionate in some of the styling, and I feel like this is so much better resolved in its proportions. You've got the ginger cases that flow nicely into the headlight units, and the headlight units also flow nicely into the grille. It's very balanced, it's very level, yet very smooth. It's kind of, like I said, a very proportional Bauhaus design. And what I really like about this particular model is the alloys. Now, nearly all the Polos, bar the 16 valve, they had these steel wheels, which I understand was practical, but it's such a shame because Volkswagen designed this car so perfectly and they adorned it with really dull wheels. At least they could have given it wheel trims like the K11 Nissan Micro or the Mark I Renault Clio. At least they suited the car a bit better in terms of its styling. The steel wheels, I just don't think it does any justice to this car's wonderful styling, but these alloys do. These alloys were called Indianapolis alloys. Not sure why they're called that, but they're very 90s in design. They're kind of bubble effects, kind of spokes. I really, really like it. Suits this car heavily. And so, yeah, like I said, you've got very smooth surfaces. There's not a line in sight here. You just see that kind of smoothness to the design. And I really think this is the kind of the first of the Volkswagen Audis to have this kind of smoothness design. I mean, not long after this, you had the Mark I Audi A4, which had, again, very smooth surfaces like this car. And obviously you had the Mark IV Golf and the Passat from 97 as well. But this had it before all of them. This is why I think the styling comes from here. But anyway, as you can see, you've got a very tall glass house here, and in fact you've got the middle pillar, which is unusual in that it's not actually black, it's actually body coloured. That is designed to emphasise both the strength and the height of the vehicle. And yes, black rubbing strips, I love that. It's really practical in this day and age. It's had a little bit of work done to the rust. These cars unfortunately did rust a little bit over time. The seals have been done, thankfully, but unfortunately a bit of patchwork has meant that the colour is a bit faded here and there. But overall, design is very well balanced, it's very well proportioned, it's a very good design. Now, if I bring cameraman Dylan to the back of the vehicle, like I said, those ginger cases really do continue on this car. It's very 90s in its design. You've got full-size ginger caser here. Now, it's frustrating you've only got one reverse light, but I forgive it because it does look really good in this car. And you've got these really nicely designed taillight clusters. I know the 6N2 obviously felt more modern and it was one piece, in terms of the whole thing being red. I prefer this one, viewers. I'm sorry, I do. And also, unlike the 6N2, I actually prefer the fact the number plate is in between the taillights and not down there. Again, it makes the car feel a little bit lowered and a bit more stance, a bit more better in terms of proportions anyway. But it's a fantastic looking car. And actually, to be fair to Volkswagen, this design was around for at least 7 years because it aged so well. And actually, my personal opinion here, I'm probably gonna get a bit of hate for saying this, but the Volkswagen Polo 9N just doesn't look as good as this. I'm sorry. I know we're trying to encapsulate the Volkswagen Lupo, and the Lupo is a good looking car. But the Polo, this is the better design. And to be honest with you as well, I actually think this is one of the best looking Polos of all time. This generation was one of the best, up there with the Mark Vs as well. I think they're pretty good too. The current generation, especially in the facelift form, is nice, but the Mark V and this Mark III, for me, are my favourites. It feels modern and it feels fresh and it feels very, very 1990s. This is the first Volkswagen, in my opinion, to have this kind of fresh design, which then all the Volkswagen range and Audi range had.
Have what you want, your ways always the best way. I have succumbed to this passive sensation, peacefully falling away. I am the zombie your wish will come.
Could you believe it's April and it's still freezing cold? The interior in this car is very austere, and it's probably the best way I can describe it, really. I actually quite like the austere design of this car, but even I can't deny that the 6N2 had a far superior design to this. Really modern, and it still holds up to this day. This, however, has, well, an air of versatility, which is what you expect from a Volkswagen from the 1990s, and it really does play up to that. You've got a very, well, curvaceous, I guess, kind of bulbous looking steering wheel in front of you with a huge airbag and then 2 buttons for the horn on each side of the airbag. But the dials are very clearly laid out, actually very nicely laid out too, for that matter. And you've got electronic readouts for the mileage and the miles in between journeys, for example, and obviously the time. And so, yeah, it does have a mishmash of 90s and modern, but I think it's still fantastic. Everything has an air of good quality to it. I mean, even the vents, for example, the vents go up and down with a nice smoothness. It just feels timeless. It's a 30-year-old car. There's no squeaks, no rattles. It's really, really well built. Everything switches so nicely and everything's smooth to operate. And so, yeah, it's a good interior, but a little bit on the boring side. You do have a sunroof. The handle is just, the quality is excellent for an old car of this type. It's brilliant. And like I said, it's not just the switches in front of you, but it's the switches all around the car, which feel very, very good quality. Chunky, yet smooth, not without being too difficult to operate. This is a fantastic car just to sit in as a driver, let alone to actually drive. Yes, I know, it looks very uncomfortable back here, viewers. This chair is behind my own driving position, and I'm 5'11", and yeah, it's not got any legroom, but then this is a Super Mini from the 1990s. Loads of headroom too. You just got to hope that the person who's driving the vehicle or the person who's sitting behind is short. What I really like, those seats are really comfortable. It's just a shame about the legroom, but again, it's a small platform. I'm not expecting miracles. The interior is beautiful, and actually I really like the seat cloths. The style of the seat cloths are really good. In my opinion, it looks like a Magic Eye painting, and I suspect what it's trying to portray is a day at the Derby, horse racing. I don't know what it's meant to be, but I really like it. And I love the colours too. It's really nicely laid out in here. Plus, it's a very good car for its time. For me, one of the best Super Minis of its time in terms of comfort and in terms of interior feel. This is excellent. Wonderful car for a little car of its era. The Polo's got a reputation just for being quite a solid and sensible car. It's never really had a reputation for setting the world alight in terms of the way it drives. If anything, in this particular market, it's always been the Ford Fiesta that's been the one with the reputation, and you know, to a less extent the Mazda 2 and the Suzuki Swift. But with that trade-off, you will get excellent comfort, excellent levels of refinement in this car anyway, and the seats are very comfortable and the ride's very agreeable. So this is an excellent small car around town, and to be honest, it doesn't feel so much like a small car, it feels like a shrunken large car. There is a lot to commend in terms of its practical everyday use. So I'm sure most people by now are very much aware that the Volkswagen Polo is this reputation of being stoic and solid and reliable and sensible. It's probably the best way to describe it is sensible. And yeah, it's pretty much business as usual with this particular model. Now this is an automatic, I should mention. It's a 1.6 auto 8-valve engine with about 75 brake horsepower. But that figures only tell part of the story. This, for a Super Mini, is heavy. It's almost a ton. But this, for pretty much any other cars in any other class, and especially a modern day car, is very, very light. And this 74/75 brake horsepower engine hides another figure, torque. Because even if the figures show a low figure, it does feel like a torquey little unit. It feels like it's got plenty of punch right through the rev range. And that makes this car excellent on the motorway. For a small car anyway, it really is. Today, I was conducting a 2-hour journey from Essex to Port Solent in Southampton for a car meet. On the journey, it was absolutely faultless, flawless, smooth and compliant ride, and yet plenty of poke for the motorway for overtaking. Absolutely wonderful. It really, really is. No small car from this era can hold a candle to the levels of refinement and comfort this car has. This is, if I'll be honest with you, the most comfortable small car I have ever reviewed on my channel. It really is. Now, Jude's Renault Clio Mark 1 was excellent. There's no doubt about that. But just wasn't as solid feeling, or at least as agreeable in terms of the ride as this was. And obviously the Toyota Yaris which I drove was also extremely comfortable, but again felt just a little bit flimsy in places compared to this. This really resolves all those little issues. It's not the best on fuel economy. I think something like the equivalent Nissan Micra K11 would just run rings around it in that respect, but it's not bad either. Now the thing is, with these cars, they're not the last word in dynamism, and there's a lot of truth about that, but that's not the full picture with this car, because I find that the steering is actually really precise. I know what the front wheels are doing actually. It does feel very, well, alive. It definitely feels enthusiastic going into corners. What doesn't feel so enthusiastic, however, is the body roll. It really is a trade-off between the handling and the body roll. I can feel what the front wheels are doing, but the body work, well, the body says no. And that's the problem. It just doesn't want to go around corners as well, or at least it's not very confident inspiring going around corners. But the steering, on the other hand, is fantastic. It really is. So it's not as bad as people make it out to be in terms of dynamism, but the Ford Fiesta will probably run rings around it. Just to add further as well, when I was heading to Port Solent today, I had to use a stretch of the M25, which is pretty much entirely concreted over. And that stretch is horrendous. But with the exception of the Mark 1 Renault Megane, this was one of the only other cars that I've driven on that stretch of road, which feels comfortable enough. And for a Super Mini, that's astonishing. I really felt relaxed in that part, even though I hate that part of the M25. That has to be the worst part of the M25 known to man. But anyway, in terms of the actual Polo, yeah, fantastic car. And bear in mind, it's a 1990s car. This must have changed the game, not just for Volkswagen, but for the Super Mini market. It makes you appreciate that you don't just need a GTI for a fun, small little car. This is fun enough, albeit a bit of body roll, and it's peppy enough too, albeit not necessarily a GTI. It's a little bit of a compromise, but it's a very good compromise. And overall, I think this is an absolutely fantastic small car. I'm really, really proud of it. And I think, well, anyone who owns this car, and Volkswagen themselves, should be really proud of this car, because this is a very, very good, not only Volkswagen, and not only a Polo, but a very good 90s hatchback, a very good 90s Super Mini. Well done. I'm going to come clean with you viewers. I wasn't expecting to really like this car. I thought it was going to be a bit solid and a bit dull, if I'll be completely honest with you. But you know what? It's really turned me around, this vehicle. I must admit, for a start, yes, the handling isn't perfect. It does steer fairly precisely, but then you've got a lot of body roll. So it really is a bit of a trade-off. With that trade-off comes excellent comfort levels. I mean, for me, out of all the Super Minis I've reviewed on my channel, this has to be the most comfortable Super Mini I've reviewed so far. And it's solid. The build quality is excellent. But this car is almost 30 years old and it still feels solid, like it's hewn from a piece of stone. It's fantastic. You can't go wrong with a car like this. But for me, the best part of it is a lot of Super Minis at the time, like the Nissan Micra K11, for example, it feels like a 1990s modern interpretation of the original Mini. But this, on the other hand, feels like a mini Golf. This doesn't want to be like a small car and a modern version of it. This wants to be a shrunken down big car, and it's all the better for it. I absolutely love it. So for me, I have to be honest with you viewers, this is a 10 out of 10 car. It really is worth every point. Well done, Volkswagen, this is fantastic. Anyway viewers, I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did enjoy my video, please don't forget to like this video. If you can share it, it'd be great. And if you can subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much, viewers. Bye-bye. And today I was conducting a 2-hour journey to the Port Solent car meet in Southampton from London, from Essex.